Down. All right. So I want to welcome you to Be Simply today, Mason Tailored from Australia. This is so exciting to have you here.
Yeah.
Really, really excited to talk about Mother Nature, herbs, all these amazing things that can help us with our well-being, which is super important in this day and age, to re-educate the humans, I'll say, on planet Earth about how they can be in proactive wellness versus
hmm
reactive wellness. So I would love for you to share. I thought it'd be really beautiful twofold. Is one, let's start there with proactive well-being and how you got inspired to work with nature and what the value is to think ahead versus after the fact.
Thank
When
you
the
so much for
in
having me on. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. I love that question. And I will endeavor not to run off on a 3-hour rant because it's such a good topic. And it's
Yeah.
like I'm 10 years down the track of having my business now, which is a trip. And it was a couple years before that I dived headfirst into the deep end of, I don't know, just trying to figure out, my own wellness, what health intentions are for me, what the purpose of me getting into the health scene was. And I went really fanatic. And I was in my last year of university, especially when I decided I didn't want to study what I was doing. And so I sat at the back of my lectures studying
Yeah.
health and, detoxification and herbalism and all these kind of amazing things. I just became fanatic all of a sudden. I was driving up to the mountains and only drinking spring water that I'd harvested myself and
Mm.
cleansing my organs and all that kind of stuff. And I had some immunological things going on. I had some um, fungal things going on and some fatigue. And yet that didn't inspire me. My symptoms didn't inspire me. I wanted them gone, but it didn't inspire me to go deeper and deeper. I was constantly thinking about the trajectory I was on for the decades to come. And I just
Mm.
always, that's my kind of, for you guys, North Star, for me, Southern Cross, my guiding light, is for me to go, where am I going to be when I'm 70 or 80 or 90? It was
Right.
just an easy space
Uh-huh.
for me to drop into. And I didn't like the trajectory I was on when I was in my early 20s, although I was having fun. I was a ski instructor and bartender and scallywag and vagabond, and I really enjoyed that. And I still am those things. But I was like, oh, I can feel I'm kind of going to move eventually onto shaky ground and walk on eggshells. And so when I was studying all this health stuff, I was looking into different elements of herbalism. I'd look into, traditional Chinese medicine herbalism and the way that it's played out today, the way it's treated today, which is, heavily, it's been heavily washed with Western pathology mentality. So it's still very symptom based and problem solution. That happened since the 50s. It's not what it once was. It's not classical anymore. And same with Western herbalism. And I was like, I wanted to connect with this craft of herbalism, but I just had such a long term vision, and no one had the terminology. Basically, no system had the terminology that was really tickling me in all the right places. Till I found Taoist tonic herbalism, and as I was studying that, it had a terminology for how to continue to cultivate. As you got into the herbs, it would talk about the treasures of the body, the Jing, Qi, and Shen. It would talk about the purpose of health is, yes, to alleviate symptoms. And there's a big arm of classical Chinese herbalism that is about taking people from disease states or symptom states and taking them back to a place where they are, you know, for lack of a better word, healthy. But like many of the Western systems, it just did not stop there. And it goes on a cultivation conversation. It goes into, it has a really broad conversation about how to tend to your body the same way that you're going to be tending to, I don't know, the upkeeping of your house or a community. And I really resonated with that concept because it gave me something to continue to sink my teeth into after I had dealt with my symptoms. And that same philosophy, and you can really see that goes from, you could look at the difference of like what traditional Chinese medicine has become, and it's
Right.
really, as I said, it's become like a very westernized system. Not to say that it's not great, but it's a different medical system than it
Absolutely.
was a couple of thousand years ago, and that
Yeah.
needs to be acknowledged, that it is a
Yes.
different medicine and it's an experimental medicine at that, or it's one that's been diluted and it's trying to find its way. Whereas if you go back a few thousand years, or even you go back to like the before the Mao era in China, you can see there's like say one bit of terminology that was lost where young in right now if you go to a practitioner in the for TCM, they'll be like, all right, you've got a chi deficiency, we're going to write that deficiency, so on and so forth. But what's been lost, which is present in Taoist terminology and the whole point of the Taoist herbs, is the concept of qihua, which is about taking it's about restoring the capacity for the qi to continue to move and transform itself. And so if you see a disease
Yeah.
state or a symptom emerging, it's because something within you has forgotten its way and it's lacking its capacity to transform through an organ system. And straight away, if you think in that mentality and you start feeling into that mentality, you immediately get out of a Western state of getting into homeostasis, getting into balance, getting well, which is really significant because that's the mentality that say has like, when I remember what pops to mind is when my brother had appendicitis and went in, got his appendix taken out, and then just got little, ruffle on the top of the head and kicked out of the hospital. And off you go, you little scallywag. Get out. We don't have to tend to anything else. And that is the end point of that kind of thinking of going, you've got a blockage or a deficiency.
Mhm.
In this instance, let's cut it out. Or in the instance of what TCM has become, again, not wrongfully, it's like let's give you a formula and some acupuncture to get you to the point where you are balanced. That is a problem solution kind of mentality. And we know
Absolutely.
what that can happen on a propaganda model as well. And then it keeps everyone in a sick state.
Yep.
And it doesn't look at potential. And that's literally what all of life is potential. And that's so
Absolutely.
it was studying Taoism that got me into that. And
Mm.
so then I started, and I'm such a high flyer. I like absolutes as well. I like to be right. And that's my if I and so it's been a good practice for me to bring a slipperiness to my approach and ground me in the as majority of people listening will know that the special source of your health and wellness practice doesn't come from any identification with an ideology or a big high flying healing modality and practice. And the end of the day, it's going to come from those little things, the chopping wood, the carry water that you've
Yep.
done to tend to the foundations of your body, ones that aren't sexy to put on Instagram. And it's a much more subtle and visible transformation process that someone needs to go through and has a lot of psychological and emotional
Yeah.
healing that it's undertaken to arrive at that place where you're calm and ready to transform your culture of health and lifestyle. So you're doing these little things over
Yeah.
years and years and over decades, and you're moving towards that, that destiny of, the 70, 80, and 90-year-old actually earning the right to become an elder, not just
Yes.
being someone that's just like, you don't listen to the elder, respect the elders anymore. And it's like, we don't. And we should, regardless of where anyone's at. But
Right.
there's also like a reality that there's someone that's worked really hard to deal with their shit internally and they've become less
Yeah.
of an asshole and more of an awesome person and they're vibrant and healthy and they've maintained the health of their treasures, the Jing Qi Shen internally with
Yep.
herbs and so on, or everything else that comes in this practice. They earn the right to energetically really step up and become a leader. And that's what we need more of. And that's kind of how I've approached health and wellness. And that's what's informed SuperFeast as I've created that company.
Beautiful. Well said, Aho. And for the listeners that might be more acclimated to westernized, Eastern and westernized medicine in general, if you can share a little bit, what a lot of people don't realize, that our healing is psycho-spiritual. And then what you're alluding to is there's all these practices that we can do on a daily basis to continue to, one, discover and to strengthen our energetic field so we're ready
Mhm.
maybe to see those deeper levels that take some courage to look at so that we can ultimately transform them. If you can share a little bit about the pieces that have been omitted, because Chinese medicine way back in the day had things that are glossed over, like ghost points, where you can have a spiritual and possession invasion, where they kind of don't want to even teach that in traditional westernized Chinese medicine. because that's a shamanic practice that has to be understood. In addition, the aspect of, you know, what you're offering and how to be in harmony with our surroundings to really access the medicine of the Tao and Chinese medicine. If you can share
Yeah.
what you've uncovered for yourself in that process and how it translates to your company and your life.
Well, yeah, thanks for diving into that because that's
The
and
deep
it's a
end. I just
nice
went
thing.
into the deep end.
Yeah, well, it's nice and it's something I don't get to really share about a lot. And I, like many people in this in like in this community, I'm not like a what you'd see as being a traditional businessman. Still to this day, we're like maybe now 10 years in, maybe we should have a business plan. And I'm only the first time going like, you know what, I like the concept of that that
Yeah.
boundary, having a
Yeah.
strong boundary that kind of keeps me directed towards something. But SuperFeast, I have always had a problem, not of other companies. I always reflect and feeling for myself when I've gone into stages when I've had to double down and talk about these Taoist herbs and try and communicate these Taoist herbs to the community because it wasn't medicinal mushrooms and adaptogens weren't sexy when I started. Um, in Australia anyway. There was a little, cult following, and there's always the people like myself and a lot of people listening who are the early adopters. But back then, I was hit with these quandaries where people would be like, first of all, you should be just talking about like adaptogens and talking about all these fandangle benefits that people are going to get. And something in me was a bit irked as I went down that route, which was a good experience for me to go, I do need to communicate these things to people who have like, the woman who has 4 kids and full-time job and just needs to be able to understand this so she can go deeper down the track. And all these examples that I have in my mind are literally people who at the markets in Sydney when I was coming up. That's how I started this thing. I'd be telling them, I'd be trying to teach them how to go out and harvest their own mushrooms, and they'd be like, "Dude, shut up! I'm not like, I've got 4 kids." This woman was like, "I got 4 kids. 2 of them are autistic. I got a full
Oh,
time job. We get
yeah.
sick. We get the flu every year,
Oh,
and it takes us down for like 3 weeks. Like, just shut up and give me some mushroom powder." And I'm like, and so I kind of realized there's appropriateness of times to communicate
right.
certain depths of philosophy and and that I was like that was the one conversation that made me cease being completely uncomfortable around offering a product because I was for a long time. But ultimately what happens is I do need that part of my business that's simple and easy to grasp and approachable. What most Western wellness companies I found were doing that I was looking to, that they have done the same, they've taken the same model that say Western that say like those self-colonizers in China. This is we'll go into it. The people in China, they've gone and scalpeled out a particular part of Chinese medicine
Right.
that's not too confronting to basically a Western mind or a fast growth model. And they've taken that and they've added some pathology, they've added diagnosis of Western disease states,
Right.
things that do not exist in Chinese medicine and
Yep.
can't exist if you are inhabiting that realm. Not to say that there isn't this beautiful symbiosis that can happen if you're standing in that realm and you can stand next to Western medicine and work in collaboration. That's like 100% necessary. But with what I could have done with tonic herbalism is just scalpeled it out of this Taoist system or this classical Chinese medical system,
Yeah.
taken it out and commodified it and just gone, I'm just going to sell fandangle benefits that, and then once I talk about these benefits and maybe you get some of those benefits, that's it. That's my responsibility gone. I don't need to talk about it anymore. It made me
Right.
uncomfortable because it's incomplete
Mm.
and it's non-congruent or respectful to the roots in which this philosophy came from. And I actually think majority of I think the wellness scene is like a beautiful thing. I don't even know what I mean by that. The wellness and the spirit, the west, the Western wellness and spiritual
Yeah.
development, self-development scene is so beautiful, but it's quite immature and lacks a lot of respect. And it, I think the biggest lack of respect is in how quickly we will brand a very small slither of a wisdom tradition and
Right.
isolate it and think and justify to ourselves, this is actually, no, it's okay because I'm putting something really good out there into the community that's going to help people.
Right.
Like one very small, like little, slither of a dimension of meditative development with a meditative practice, and brand that and put that out there without
Right.
having a connection, or an education about what you do when you start hitting the glass ceiling of that, and how you begin to access the rest of that dimension of healing, or
Right.
a system of maintaining a healthy society or an inner body. And most of the time it's not really a problem, but you do see a lot of people in undergoing ideological or isolated spiritual practices, healing health techniques, so on and so forth. And they, because it's been isolated, it naturally is something that people can begin to go outside themselves and lose their identity and become over identified with and become
Mm.
ideological with, and that takes them further away from their own self agency. Whereas if you are dealing with an entire wisdom tradition, there's so many slippery places within that system that it will always send you back to yourself. And
Right.
so I've gone very macro there, but
Yeah.
that's why when I talk about Taoist tonic herbs, like people come along to one of my talks thinking I'm going to be like, all right, everybody, here's reishi mushroom. Reishi mushroom is, hepatoprotective, and it's great for white blood cell cultivation. And it's actually considered a lung tonic as well as a liver tonic, but of course it's a heart tonic. And and educate them about that herb in isolation. And I do that eventually, but only when I'm convinced that I have communicated the to the to an extent the limited I know at this point of the tradition in which this has come from. And so
Right.
for me, that's talking about the Taoist roots of shamanism, even though that confuses a lot of my market.
Yeah.
It's ethical, at least for me, to
Absolutely.
communicate that there is, this where, even though I haven't got it completely colored in of where this comes from, and I don't consider myself a Taoist, say, per se, we're continuing to, create places where it's not a black and white practice with tonic herbalism. Just as things become available to you internally, thanks to what the herbs can help transform and the practices that go along with them transform aspects in you, you have the tools and awareness to go and color in and make sense of these awarenesses, and therefore you develop yourself, and
Right.
therefore you become less of an asshole, whatever that means for you, and you become more of an awesome person. And
Yeah.
that's how I sleep at night. And there's actually, I'll just finish with this. There's a woman here in Australia, who's she's from China, and she's just like an absolute legend and she was the one was getting in trouble at her universities in China for bringing up the classics and going, hang on, diabetes does not exist in traditional
Right.
Chinese medicine. Why are you talking about it? Why are you having heart specialists be involved in the healing in a Chinese medical
Right.
scenario when that literally does not exist and can't exist, because it keeps you, blind-eyed looking down a
Yeah.
tunnel of what the problem is, which is what Western medicine does and is good
Yep.
for in a crisis. But
Right.
it doesn't allow you to dance through the five organ system and discover to an extent, a core level when you're talking about alleviating symptoms or disease states anyway, where the lack of capacity is come about, or the blockage has come about, so that your body's chi is not able now to transform between yin and yang. And
Yeah.
that's what the core of it is. Her name's Rhonda Chang. If anyone wants to go check out
Mm.
her stuff,
We'll
she
clear it
calls it
down.
she calls it her book Chinese medicine masquerading as E, which is YI. So Chinese medicine masquerading, which is it's okay if traditional Chinese medicine is like, you know what, we are a relatively new medical system that is kind of patronized by Western medicine. Western medicine's like, we'll do the real disease. You can use some of our, hospital stuff and our pathologies and our panels and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But if anyone actually gets like a disease state, if anyone has like a thing we diagnose as cancer, you're not legally allowed to treat that anymore. You're going to have to use Western methodology.
Mhm.
And that's fine as long as you admit it. Don't masquerade as like the classical Chinese medical model. And a lot of
Right.
people don't get that. And I'm just a hobbyist. I'm just an advocate for this stuff. I'm a fan of getting acupuncture, and so it's hard when they're, and I talk to a lot of acupuncturists have just come through school, and they can, there is a frustration for them because they're, and this is like many people learning, healing arts, is there's this blockage to the roots of the system, and Western mindset and medicine and regulation has instilled in them. Uh, they lack belief in their own healing systems, where in fact they're very full power, and if you can inhabit with confidence,
Yep.
and not just confidence, with ethic. If you can inhabit that world, you can start to untap this, this hidden to us power of, say, Chinese medicine. And so yeah, like Rhonda Chang calls it the self colonization of Chinese medicine. So it's
Mm,
colonized itself and turned it into a commodity. And so
absolutely. Yeah.
that's an interesting one for me, because although I talk about it often, like, the slipperiness of these herbs, and I'm offering these herbs in a in a um in a business, and there is a brand, and I'm having those conversations which have been
Yeah.
uncomfortable to
Well,
me.
yeah, then
Yeah,
let's dive in a little deeper to that because, in, my own private practice and how I assist people, I'm more like the old school apothecary, where I'll only custom make things for people, teas and spices that they cook with and stuff like this. And I love your guys' product for many reasons because it can give me a solution that I can add to what I offer. And if we talk about, there is going to be the person that's going to enter and say, "Ooh, that's going to make me feel alive," or whatever it is, or
which is awesome.
beautiful, right? So that's the entry point.
Yeah.
But if you can talk a little bit deeper about how one size doesn't fit all, and
Mm.
that's why Chinese medicine is quite complex. It's not like, oh, you just have a kidney issue. Is it wet? Is it heat? Is it dry? All these different things that could, and it's not really related to your kidney. It's actually related to this over here. And
Yeah,
so,
as soon as something gets diagnosed or going, you have diabetes or you have headaches, therefore you've I don't know, you've got heat in the liver and rebellious chi, because we've started with a Western diagnosis or
right,
a symptom and tracked it down and cataloged, which is what, it's a cataloging. Sometimes it does work, but most of the time it doesn't. It doesn't allow you malleable enough to feel and understand the dynamic of the elements inside the body. And, you just generally, you can get clues from those kinds of things, but traditional Chinese medicine, if you is literally become Parkinson's is this. And I think there's a,
right,
like, Parkinson's is this in a Chinese diagnostics scenario. And
right,
this is, I talk about this. I'm not stubborn about it. I talk about this with a lot of practitioners and where it is useful and where it's not. But
right,
a lot of the time it does create a stab in the dark mentality. And there
right,
is a lack of effectiveness in the current Chinese medical practitioner world that is not acknowledged, and as well in the Western medical world, because
right.
they're of course, but they're and like, it's uncomfortable to look at. I mean, I got to look at where I'm ineffective, and it sucks.
Yeah.
I don't like doing it. It's uncomfortable, but I do it, and that's what acupuncturists and Chinese medical practitioners need to do.
Well, and even the patients or the clients, if the importance, because we're sitting in an era right now where humanity wants an instant fix. So that's part of the reason we're in the situation. The
Exactly.
problem we're in, we want Chinese medicine to be an instant fix or any other holistic practice or natural way of medicine science, or we want Western medicine to be this instant fix. But one size doesn't fit all. Uh, and so, if you can share with the listeners a little bit, if you're someone that's on a path to healing, how uh, important patience is, and
Mm.
when you're talking about that, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 20. If you really want to attain something in this lifetime, meaning your true golden years that you can take on beyond here, that takes effort. It's not, you don't get to just check it off, as an app on your computer. So if you could share a little
Mm.
bit about that, the patience that's required and the identification of maybe like someone selected an herb or something off your site, but maybe they realize almost immediately that it's not harmonious with them, or that they need to sit with it for a little bit longer because they're resisting what the plant is offering. 'Cause these are subtleties a lot of
Awesome.
people forget about.
Oh yeah, I mean they're subtle, and and I'm sure that it's not going to be things that people is new to people, but we got to remember all these. There's a reason why medicine became commodified, because in an industrial world, um, we didn't have if you're working if a classical practitioner or an Ayurvedic practitioner, whatever, is working with a patient, they would have traditionally known that society or the tribe or the community has a culture which is also going to be congruent with healing. And so in classical Chinese culture, although there's lots of things that aren't that connected, like ultimately, like a say like a Taoist healer is going to know that there is going to be awareness of adaptation with the seasons, and that there is an element within yourself that reflects the seasons, and you can ride those waves and eat appropriately. And it's just a matter of taking your physical practice in summer from being fiery and yang and one that's inducing a lot of sweat, to landing in that spleen earth element and taking a break and taking stock and understanding that spleen season of
Mm,
late summer is connected to your intellect. And so there's a culture of reflecting on how your intellect is judging the quality of your thoughts, the quality of your beliefs, and you're grounded and you kind of can take stock. Knowing that then in autumn, which is where we're in right now, it's a real breath out and a sigh of relief for us right
mm,
now, where you guys are just springing up and sprouting.
yeah.
It's a time that inherently there's going to be a ritual of allowing yourself to mourn
Mm,
and do the old permaculture chop and drop. Chop
yeah.
that's like you can identify, can be quite cunning, and and identify that which is cool. I'm gonna once again be able to let go of that, let that go down and fertilize and give me something to sprout up within the spring. So when you're treating, you know that that's going to be present, and therefore you're able to actually work within a holistic manner. Whereas today we have a society that is constantly working against that
Yeah.
symbiosis with nature, or being in reality of that. Therefore, a practitioner is just going to try and continue to help someone to hold on, and
Right.
that's the best that they can do. And that's actually reasonable. So I'm not actually like, I don't feel overly bad quality judgment coming from myself to those practitioners. I really sympathize, because you go, cool, I'm going to become this classical Chinese practitioner. And then it just like people go back to say for them, it might go back to a toxic environment that isn't even sync at all with the seasons. And it's like, well, that's not a responsible way as either
Right.
to practice your art. You're going to have to adapt yourself. And so as a patient, it's why it's important for you to continue to create your own culture of health. um,
Mm,
Generally, I think that's once you can get past an over identity with an ideological path of what's going to be health and wellness, if you can get past any kind of concepts of you finding a way of living that's superiorly, is more superior in its health promoting benefits.
mm,
I think that's the starting point for anyone to actually access the capacity to truly build a culture that via osmosis will roll out to the family members, so on and so forth. You can't. I just the as well, from a healing sense, from the way we talk about it with the herbs, is the whole purpose of these herbs is to ensure yin yang is consistently transforming within the body in
mm,
flow, and that the organs have a remembering of how to do that, right? And so it's
right.
just a remembering and awareness of how to consistently transform, which is, there's a lot of yielding and intent
Yeah.
that comes with that. And it's actually quite natural and easy once everyone has experienced that, when you get out of the colonized mindset, and you can just
Yeah.
get into a flow with yourself, your nature, and your true nature and nature. And then through that, as the chi is transforming and moving, we've got little techniques to tend to symptoms as they come along, but underground we're just getting that moving. The idea is that our Jing, Qi, and Shen, those treasures, so Jing
Yep.
being that potential power in the battery pack of the kidneys. And so you can imagine, like, your body, if your body's just like just non-animate yet, just laying there, and we've got this big blueprint of potential. The genes are sitting there. We know that they're going to have some good stuff in there, and you can already see I'm using a Western term to help people connect, because
Yeah.
genes don't exist
They're
within
like, "What is that?"
our mind. Yeah, which is, and that's appropriate as well. I'm not a purist either. I'm not like, like, no, no, not allowed to even think that. But that you look at the bone health, yeah, good bone, there's bone structure,
Yeah,
there you can see the marrow, like the marrow of the brain. You look at that, you go, wow, that jing potential there is going to be a strong foundation for that person. There, and if there's a lot of jing, that correlates to, have a lack of capacity to get exhausted. You've got to, and if you tend to that treasure of jing, you
mm,
don't enter tired states, and you don't burn the candle at both ends, so that when you get to 70 years old, you don't have any power left in your battery pack. You've leaked your jing. You kind
yeah,
of go, oh man, I can't recharge like I did when I was 20. And it's like,
right,
yeah, because you haven't maintained that capacity of your body to recharge. You've gone too far, and now you've actually started to dig in to your deep potential in order to fire yourself
right,
up through the day. And that's when people become more likely to age rapidly and
right,
deteriorate quick. And so there's the jing, the chi. Imagine that body, all of a sudden we go, sparks up, and it comes to life, and it gets
yeah,
animated. So fluids are moving, say, like even like the intelligence that moves, hormones and the endocrine system communication, thoughts moving, blood moving, all these kinds of
mm,
things, animation of the body, regulation of temperature, the capacity
mm,
to keep everything upright and not just crumble
yeah,
to gravity. This is your chi. That treasure is very important as well to maintain, and that's the biggest chop wood carry water treasure. So people will
yeah,
just come in going, I'm exhausted, and burn the candle at both ends. I need jing herbs that cultivate those kidneys. They
right,
actually, those herbs keep the organs, the yin yang transformation happening through the relevant organs, that via osmosis we will see either a maintenance of that treasure or a
right,
cultivation of that treasure eventually. So it's not
yeah,
it's not, we don't work directly on the treasures. We work on the organs, and the transformation of chi
right,
that then affects that, and we see that. And then the chi, though, like once people get their jing built and they're sleeping well again, and they're not living excessively, and once it takes a while, it can take years at times to be like, wow, I feel like I'm not sacrificing myself in order to live, basically.
yeah,
Um, that's a funny conversation for you to go through, but it's basically embracing a capacity to gracefully age. And if you're aging gracefully, you're not excessively wasting your jing away, which some people want to do. Some people want to flog themselves through their 30s and 40s, and they don't care. They'll deal with the consequences and then get onto it in their 50s. But that's
right,
that's less sustainable. Chi is from the our sunlight hydration, but mostly from the food we're eating and the good quality air that we're breathing. And we can have a lifestyle where we're running on that chi that we're getting through those things that we're consuming. And then eventually people will fall on that maintenance mode with their herbal practice, taking chi herbs. So there's like, we've got, and there's astragalus, there's many of them, poria, white
yeah,
atractylodes, and a lot of the time the mushrooms are going to fall into that category. Like, our reishi and porias are going to be, mostly correlated to that. Just keeping the engine going with these tonic herbs. And that's the same with our capacity to not be stressed and breathe easy, digest easy. That's going to help cultivate that chi. And then the third treasure is our shen. And that's related to our consciousness, personality, our spirit to an extent, that there's many shades of spirit and soul, as everyone would know. But it's bringing through that capacity to embody and express wisdom or a virtuous nature. This is really where you become less of an asshole and more of an awesome person. If you've got a strong if the whole point of, like, it's like the same with hydration, the nice little bits of exercise, letting go of ideology, and having a malleable capacity to move on psychologically and spiritually, and learn and adapt and be a perpetual student, as well as taking these tonic herbs, you are living a sustainable lifestyle. Therefore your jing will remain strong. And then
mm,
sometimes people are entering states of extreme stress, and they can't help but be in places where, in a state where, like that something financial's going on, people, someone close to them dies, you lose a job, so on and so forth. Ideally, you've gotten into these practices and you've got that lifestyle going. So you've got those strong foundations that your adaptation to stress and your robustness is present. Because that's often, as you go on through life, those moments of tragedy or adversity, those are the ones that can really get in. And if you're not prepared, you'll need to sacrifice and pour out a lot of that jing from your kidneys, and you've only got so much. And that leads you more to, you see when people suddenly rapidly age when something happens as they get a little bit older, because they've been walking on eggshells, and that gets revealed.
Mm,
I mean, it's the same as, like, you can relate to with finances. If you're not set up correctly and all of a sudden financial hardship from an external factor hits, if you're not operating sustainably as a household or a business, you're going to get revealed very quickly not being in a sustainable financial position, and you'll get bottomed out, and you'll either just have to deal with it and move on, or you turn yourself into a victim, so on and so forth.
right.
Um, or you won't be able to just accept the reality of the situation. It's the same with the jing in your body. If you can maintain that with the through these times of adversity, if you've got those foundations, but then you maintain the taking of the herbs and staying hydrated so that you can remain robust and adaptive through those situations. You don't sacrifice your jing. Therefore, your chi, you maintain a capacity to animate yourself and bring vitality to yourself and adaptation to yourself in that level, and a capacity to connect with the present, and then get into a rest and digest place where you do maintain a good quality foundation of breath and digestion. You do those things naturally. The shen is brought through more. You bring the
Mm,
light, of yourself through more, and the shen lives in the emperor and is expressed through the emperor of the heart. And
right.
the idea is more of a virtuous nature, an embodied natural capacity. As you guys know, it takes years and years of bringing
Mhm.
that genuine kindness and genuine forgiveness, and like real eternal love and capacity to see the value of yourself and the values of other around you. All those awesome things. It's great to do them because it means I get, I'm a good little boy, and in the spiritual world. But like it takes a non-stop and consistent flow through
Yeah,
your own culture and with nature for that to become very genuine, or continuingly more deep and genuine in a nourishing sense, not just a hypothetical thing that I should be doing because I know it's the good thing to do, which isn't a bad. I'm not
a
saying
starting
that's
point.
bad.
It's a starting point.
It's a starting point, but that's the idea of Taoist herbalism. It's
Yeah,
all focused on that, on
yeah,
in
beautiful.
and anyone can interpret that, like, no matter what, like lineage anyone's walking, or whether someone's just living a, like a traditional Western lifestyle, like it doesn't matter. There's no, although there might be kind of like a, like there's like the immortals and the ascended and all that in Taoism. You don't get distracted with that. These
Right,
are humans becoming the more authentically themselves, and
right.
ideally moving away from ideology or superiority as they do so. And that is,
Absolutely.
so I communicate that and be like, and then take these medicinal mushrooms and tonic herbs. That's where they come from.
So you're communicating self-reliance, creating reserves, and staying in constant harmony with yourself and your surroundings. For you, and nature shows us it's not, you don't get to the fall and drop the leaves and say, oh, I got to take a break. Then there's the
Mhm.
next season that's coming and the next season that's coming. So she shows us, this is an infinite process. For you, what has been the biggest thus far discovery for yourself, being that you seem to be a little bit of a renegade and you were on one path, even though you may still enjoy that path too. But what's been that like tipping point for you where you're just so excited about this continuous feeding and reserving and dancing with what you do?
It's really, I mean, it's been the last 5 years, especially. It's been very fast and very rich for me, and so I'm kind of, I mean, it's just changing every week. I'm almost at a at a loss to bring something up. But for me, um, I I've enjoyed watching people. Like, I enjoy having a business now where I was originally, communicating with people like, all right, so if there's something like an immunological deficiency for yourself where you're always getting sick or you feel disconnected, the mushrooms are going to be a good entry point for you. Or if you're feeling exhausted and you don't even have the foundations of feeling like you can adapt to stress or handle stress, you're just always tired. All right, and a good entry point for you is going to be the Jing, so on and so forth. Um, Being able to then create a business, which is, I'm used to being the little guy, and now in Australia, we're not. Like we're probably the leader in this tonic herbal world.
Right.
I've been really reflecting on that, and that's been a good the business has been a good dojo for me to not identify as a particular way and evolve, but then embody particular elements of myself, because I can bring that little guy to the Americas now, which is what
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying. I don't like, because in Australia there's like, like there's lots of people looking at SuperFeast and going, like they message me, young
Yeah.
guys, young women messaging me, starting their own things and reaching out to me, and it's like about how to do it, and I'm like, oh my god, like, you know, I need to accept that I'm not that person anymore. But
Yeah.
at the same time, that started the company. But at the same time, what I'm proud of is just giving you guys a context of where the business has got to here in Australia. It's not massive, like it's like, but it's like it's big enough for the fact that I don't have investors and I still own the company 100%, and that's not going to change.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. But I mean, the biggest thing for me has been watching me and the team create a culture of education in the company where we go, cool, now those benefits that you're getting through these herbs, they're miraculous sometimes. You don't really share them a lot of the time because they're people's experience and it's hard to communicate. But, taking neural nectar and getting these amazing experiences of focus and mood
Mm.
enhancement that aren't just, for the entrepreneurs and biohackers, like people that it's getting dangerous, their mood states are getting dangerous for their, in terms of like
Yeah.
breaking up their families and things like that, or people taking the mushrooms and, yeah, the immunity's there, but their connection to themselves is enhanced because it's the
Mm.
same way, it's the same fractal as like, the mushrooms and that mycelial world unifying the forest. It does unify your body at the same
Yeah.
time, and you can really connect your mind to the rest of the body with a lot of these herbs. They're very special herbs. Like there's a reason the
Yeah.
Taoists called them the messengers from heaven. There's a
Mm.
reason over 2,000 years ago in the first Materia Medica we see on the planet, official Materia Medica, that they categorized as the superior herbs. These are the special herbs that can help you cultivate life. And that been to create the most significant thing for me is watching us see people get these really big benefits, like anxiety about leaving their little town and all of a sudden going to a big city the next weekend and going, wow, like that was just taking like these mushrooms and taking
Yeah.
Mason's mushrooms. Or someone going from exhaustion, they can't get out of bed, to I can get out of bed and go, and I've got more capacity to go about my day. Then create a culture that doesn't just stop there and focus on that, because
Mm.
that's the whole, the point isn't to attribute, definitely not SuperFeast, although that's reasonable to an extent. That's in reality we're offering it. Definitely not
Right.
relying on the herbs, although they do give you something to an extent in the beginning. Then go, cool, now keep going.
Yeah.
What's your health? What remains your health intention? Now you kind of become friends with the herbs and utilize, them. That's why we source. This conversation is why we source D-Dao, the
Mm.
2,000 years ago in that same Materia Medica, the Shendong Bensao Jing, is where they say if you want the best reishi mushroom, you get it from this province,
Mm.
and then furthermore it goes on, not just this province, this microclimate, and then D-Dao herbalism, which is essentially like the China's like how to get the top quality herb that you can possibly get, is D-Dao, the original Dao. Get it from its original place, spring
Yeah.
water, air quality, away from industry. All those, grown on wild oak. In the Rishi's case, that's making sure that we're regulating where we're getting that wild oak from, so that no point is the environment getting decimated from small independent farmers that aren't big businesses, not, they're just like, they're teaching other, other people in their area how to, do this real traditional style of farming. So we're localizing industry and working with lineage, working with the land, working with humans, not, working with some, I'm not working with like a nation or a political idea here. The same way I'm not working with the Australian, or we're working with the Australian government that's destroying the Great Barrier Reef, has a worse land clearing record than
Yeah.
Brazil right now, so on and so forth. Like, I'm working with the humans and the human intent and the traditions and the land.
Right.
That's where I focus, and that's what we do in China. And when you do that, and you extract in a very particular way, where we get the entire medicine of the herb, not just an
Mm.
isolated compound, what happens is people can, and this is what I'm proud of in SuperFeast with the culture, and we can then connect people to that long-term practice of herbalism, where we're not seeking that big bang of benefit anymore, where
Yeah.
really we can go into the body and go into that cultivation mentality, integrate the herb into our culture, and move towards that 80-year-old self, where that's you've been living sustainably. Therefore, you're robust and vibrant
Mm.
and have had better opportunity to embody your virtuous nature as you get to 80. Like, that's our whole culture and approach right now. And it's been a big learning. It's been hard to
Mm.
take a Western business and be in a Western environment with, all that stuff, that,
Yeah.
and walk that line where that stays the case. So that's, yeah, proud of
Yeah.
that.
So you should be proud of it. And I was tuning in a little bit to that this morning. That how I'm glad your business has grown as I was tapping into. If you can share with the listeners and people that aspire to enter the any type of business or marketplace from a holistic standpoint and to what it takes, because here you are 10 years out, and that things oftentimes to be successful and to have the support of Mother Nature, they're going to mirror how nature works. If you can
Mm,
share a little bit of how maybe or maybe not you integrated the Tao and that process of almost the farmer mentality to keep
mhm.
building the business without the big uh, top down approach.
Yeah, I mean, or not the big investment or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, such a huge conversation. I've been thinking about it a bit. So it's quite, I'm haven't we at no point have I yet laid out our values and principles, but it's taken 10 years almost for them. I've communicated them. Everyone in our team knows them, but it's, we've had to keep our finger on the pulse and go, wow, now we're at the point where it feels really natural for us to really quite, document them. The only reason that's been possible is because I've been ensconced in every single element, and my wife has been ensconced in every single
Mm.
little element and aspect of the business. I've tried to remove myself too fast, like 5 or 6 years ago. Naturally, you see it all go to shit and the values start going to shit, and it's not congruent anymore. And
Yeah.
so, maybe I think, but getting the whole point, like, very natural, getting connected to those principles and that set of virtues or values that are the grassroots nature of the business. You are going to have to accept that if you can't communicate them, like I haven't been able to for a while. I'm at the point now where I can. I'm going through that process. But if you can't communicate them because they're too etheric and just too, juicy, and that, you don't want one of those lame like posters that's like integrity, and you're like, what? um, the the Then you're going to have to really just, you're going to need to just accept that your life is this business for a while. But then the other thing, and that, so but stay true to those principles and those roots, of course, that's an obvious one. The other thing is, if you can hold on to that, um, that ethic, and you have the tenacity to do so, then you need to remember the vision that you had and the ideas you had in terms of what business is going to look like. When you started, you had no experience, or maybe a little experience in another business. When you get 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years down the track, people are really afraid. People are quite, someone like me, I will be quite judgmental towards myself if I go, I now need to adapt and alter the way that I do business, because I've learned a little bit of few different things. I'm aware of a different reality when it comes to business. And if I'm attached to my vision or my ideas of what it was going to be, what it was meant to look like when I first started out, then I'm going to feel incongruent adapting and changing. And I feel like that's the same way as everyone. Everyone judges themselves when you're starting out as a parent, goes, it's going to be like this. And then when you get to like, 4 years
Yeah.
old and you're getting angry and you're like, oh, I'm just a cock up. I'm just, you get, but you don't have a lot of the time you don't realize, actually that person at birth or that person at the birth of a business didn't know shit.
Right.
They didn't know anything. And so why would I take advice from them in how to do business? What you
Right.
do take advice from them about is the principle, the intrinsic value, and that, that possibly the core mission, as long as you understand that the mission is going to generally be ambiguous or lofty or big, or going to just provide you with a general North Star or Southern Cross in terms to guide you, but doesn't inform a lot of the everyday ins and outs. So walking that line, I think it's an important one for people to remember, because once if you're a health, or if you're a health fanatic or a spiritual devotee going into business, once you get into elements of what it takes to run a business, you're going to feel like a sellout, and you're going to
Right.
feel like and that's just by doing basic things like having like maybe a HR document. But if you can really make sure you need to tend to that flame of your values and principles to make sure, do I need to adapt here, or am I right in the fact that this is going to go against like a real earth based value that I have. And so for me, for instance, a lot of people are like, dude, you need to go organic. And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. That's an interesting idea. That would be responsible for my business. This is like 5 years ago. I would
Yeah.
sell more. I'd have to educate less. I'm going to be able to move more products. And so that's this place where if I needed to, I would. But then I look at my principle and I look at I need to sleep at night. And so for me, that decision wasn't justified, because I'd
Right.
need to downgrade the quality of my herbs to go organic and buy from a big organic house. I want to
Right.
stay with the little farmers. And so,
Right.
although that's not a good business decision, it was for my business, because there was a particular value or principle that I have, that because I was tending the flame and I saw it as very precious, we
Mm.
didn't go in that direction. But other business decisions, I'm like, this doesn't affect this flame at all. In fact, it
Yeah.
can help amplify it. And
Right.
because I'm, that's I've been thinking about that a lot this week, because
Yeah.
every conversation I have with other entrepreneurs going through existential crises is because they're really judging the crap out of themselves, and they
Mm.
can't accept that there's all these new boundaries in my business, and I'm adhering to these rules, and I'm working with the regulators, and that's not me. And it's like,
Yeah.
boundaries are good, like boundaries you'll realize they are your saving grace. And the thing is, when you started out your business, you
Yeah.
didn't realize you needed them. You didn't realize they are the medicine that you and the team need to an extent.
Right.
And so yeah, that's spleen energy. And so the business has an elemental energy as well. And at some point, the spleen needs bonds, strong bonds. So you need really strong bonds within your team, and the
Mm.
team needs with
Wow.
themselves and with your community and with your customer. So just never stop having strong bonds. Don't be an
Mm.
asshole. So have a strong bond with your market as well. Don't be an asshole that sabotages other people. Get competitive and be aggressive, but don't sacrifice the bond that you have with the other people that are trying to learn and stumble along the way, and genuinely going along the same mission. Don't lose that magical bond. But with a bond comes a boundary, and you need those boundaries as you come along in business. And some inner processes, you can bring your flair to them and bring the circus nature to your business, but you do need them at some point. So make sure you adapt as you go along, and let your current self that has the experience and skills now dictate what the business is going to look like, not your the beautifully ignorant and pie in the sky Peter Pan, in my case, self that started it.
Well, we're glad you were Peter Pan and glad you did not have a business plan.
Yeah, everyone's like,
Because sometimes you can get lost in those things. In
Yeah.
like
Luckily,
nature,
I'm
it
charismatic.
yeah, it guides you. If you run a company or two or one or what doesn't matter, you certain things guide you all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So uh, it's funny. I opened this. I have the Shizandara here. Um,
Shazandra.
Shazandra, sorry. And it's so potent. It's been like wafting at me. So to share your beautiful product, because we're gonna today close out with your video about being here in the United States, having distribution here, which is awesome because it creates shorter ship time. And the two that you're launching out are the nourishment for the yin, the feminine, and
Mm.
also he shou wu, which we dove into the beginning. If you can share some of the, I don't know if I'm sure you have a few folklore stories about he shou wu, just so the people that don't even know what that word is, where it
Mm.
came from and what it's known
Yeah,
for.
Mr. Woo's hairy back. Yeah, well, that's like, so we're finally launching in America. Like, you can go to superfeast.com, and we've done it all from here in Australia. It's still, it's still like we haven't. Yeah, I'm proud. It took us 3 years, so we didn't do this
Woohoo!
fast. I'm
Yeah.
really, again, like, if anyone, like, this company is run by me and my wife and our 4-year-olds running around. So, like all the time, our dog Goji's always here. This is still a family company, which means we can uphold the tradition, and we haven't compromised on that launching in America. Um, so with like all the kind of the top products and eventually the whole range are now available over at superfeast.com. And Kelly, who's doing a wonderful job at help of
Yeah.
been in charge of launching America there, as Kel, she's awesome. She's here in the in HQ with us. She thought it was a great idea to really focus on that yin nourishment, and she decided as the opening special to have just immediate 10% off on the Hisha Wu and the women's blend, nourishing the feminine, the yin. We love it. So the women's blend. I'm so stoked with that
You
formula, and Hisha Wu, I just love that blend. So it's either 10% off each of them, or if you get both of them, it's 20% off. Um, which is lovely, lovely. That women's blend is just those, you got the peony, the asparagus root, Herschel Wu, Shazandra, Goji, and Dongguai. I mean, just like we source our herbs in very special ways. You'll see it when you take the herbs. There's a je ne sais quoi. There's a special sauce when you take in. The women's blend is about bringing that warmth to the female sexual organs, and especially designed in a very particular way just to maintain the orbit of chi internally.
mm,
And so it's a maintenance blend. So you may take the Hisha Wu, and that's the core, or the primary yin jing herb. So you are building fluids and essence and blood
yeah.
and capacity and potential of the chi. And so when there's exhaustion, you'll feel the Hisha Wu comes and will dramatically build that in some women, and you'll see a correcting at a foundational level. And so
Mm,
that correction though can become, that's great, and you want that, and you can take Hushawu long term. But the Gaia blend, the women's blend, is that which is, we're just going to keep the maintenance going underneath. So we're going to continue to in upregulate, or just basically regulate those functions which are constantly building blood, which are
mm,
constantly, say, regulating the hormonal function. So it might not be as much of a wow, oh, I can feel, like, unless you
yeah.
have like menstrual issues, or like extremely heavy bleeds, and you're going to very much notice the building back of blood after a bleed, say. But you notice that one over, like, especially like over 6 months, and you can reflect and you're like, wow, like, I am having a much cruisier time hormonally, or my ability to regulate my temperature is like they're way more comfortable, in a way
Mm,
more comfortable state, or my complexion is just better. Why? Because your chi's moving and your blood's moving and your blood's
yeah.
building. So women are regulated by blood, and that's why a lot of those tonics are blood tonics. Hesha will include, Hesha was just a bloody superstar, and that's the one.
Yeah.
Tani, my wife, that's how I convinced. She's just a skeptic. She's like, yeah, this stuff's gonna be, yeah, I'm sure these herbs are good. And she got onto Husha Wu, and
Mm.
had like a lot of acne stuff going on, a lot of stuff going on like from the liver post peel
Yep.
and that kind of thing, getting onto Hushawu, and then Rishi, she was able to see transformation of her energy levels, and she was already doing so much. And it's nice when this happens, when the herbs are like that final piece, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden organ function kicks in and detoxification function kicks in, and I'm like, yes, so you've perceived it now. You
Yeah.
perceive how good these herbs are, and then you when that happens, you perceive how magic your body is in its capacity to regulate itself, and you get the attribution. The herbs help, but your
Right.
body gets the attribution, which is a beautiful thing as well. So yeah, jump onto that one. But yeah, there's lots of other, there's Jing blend, Chi blend, Mason's mushrooms is there. We've
Yeah.
got the beauty blend there
Well,
for that
talk
liver.
talk a little bit about the mushrooms because those have been a great ally for this past year. I think they've gotten a lot of discovery over this past year. But if you, for long-term health, how important it is
Yeah.
just for retaining brain function, nervous system, even the unification within self to do some of that deeper psycho-spiritual healing. If you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the research and the traditional knowledge around what mushrooms do, like the tree mushrooms, these are the tree mushrooms. Reishi, cordyceps, not a tree mushroom, but in the category, poria, maitake, shiitake, all of these, it's way too good in terms of regulating every function, nervous system, endocrine, immune
Yeah.
function. They're just incredible immunologically, and we're hardwired for the compounds and energetics in mushrooms, these tree
Mm.
mushrooms. We're hardwired for them. And with this, how good we know they are now, it keeping us just afloat and then potentiating. They're a companion.
Yeah.
These tree mushrooms, especially, they are a companion. And I don't see the point in not taking them. I don't see the point in not having them in nursing homes or with your
Mm.
grandparents and keeping them a little bit of giving them a little bit of extra shielding and constitutional shielding. I don't see the point in leaving our children without their medicine. It's just like get into them daily.
Yeah.
There's times when don't take them, and that's fine. You take them for an extent, and you build a robust immune system, and that's all well and good. You don't create a dependency, but you know, at some point, like with the way the world is at, you can see, like you can see on various immunological blood, blood panels or blood, live blood testing. You can see the immediate benefit taking mushrooms brings to the immunological like the capacity to regulate and become adaptive and within your immune cells. So there's just no point in not taking them, and they are unifiers. They help you integrate, and we got a lot to integrate.
Yes. Absolutely. And can you share your favorite overarching blend that you have with Superfeast?
I mean, Mason's mushrooms is our pillar. Like that's the one. That's the one that most people. There's a nostalgia to it. There's an ease to using it because it's a formula of 8 mushrooms. Um, it connects you. They do weird and wonderful things. For some people, it's mood regulatory. For some people, they feel. For me, I originally got romanticized with them because I could feel my immune system coming back online, so my protective chi coming back
Yeah.
online. Um, and I think that's the easiest one for people to also just like, to feed into their children's, lives. And, probably from like, when they're taking, solids, you can start to slowly integrate them very small amounts. But, once you're kind of
Right.
up to like 3 years old, you just put it in this, whatever, the soup or the spag bowl, or, you guys got the
Yeah.
spaghetti bolognese. I don't know if you guys have that. That's
Yeah.
the easiest one. The other one
Yeah.
is the Jing formula, because so many people are exhausted, they don't realize what their potential is anymore, and they get onto the
Right.
Jing herb, the Jing formula, and all of a sudden you build back after weeks and months, and you go, holy shit, there's a whole nother level of my foundational energy.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, we could talk for days. What we'll do is we'll have you back in the next season
Right? Yeah, I'd
to
love.
celebrate or before then. But we appreciate you, and I'm super excited. For those listening, we'll put the links below. We're going to exit out with your announcement of being here in North America. And as inspired, everyone, get out there and check out what Superfeast has to offer. And Mason, thank you for taking the time to educate us all and be a point of inspiration for us.
Thanks so much for having me. I've had a really great time.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we're gonna put you on. Uh,
Hello, everyone, my beautiful US community. I'm laughing, the kookaburras are laughing because finally we have landed in the US and we are ready to ship directly to you from America. We're there, baby. You know, we've gone from our black cockatoo, kookaburra energy. We're now in the bald eagle tribe, and we're going to be shipping directly to your door from America. So we're just so stoked about that. We are celebrating with a few huge discounts, and that's going to be Hishu and the women's blend. We're really feeling like nourishing the women in our community, but you know, to be honest, I'm also one that likes I love the Hishu, and I also sometimes take the women's blend. That's just a little bit of a side note. Hey, it's good for building blood, and guys need to build blood as well, so it occasionally makes its entrance into my tonics as well. But we really want the ladies out there to get access, or anyone who wants to get this, get access to this, to the Hishu and the women's blend for 20% off. And if you buy them both in a bundle, you're going to get a whopping 25% off. So we're feeling like we're really going to spoil you on that level. The women's blend is such an incredible formulation, building blood, invigorating blood, warming up the sexual organs, and generally just getting the chi moving and regulating the endocrine system and women's hormones. It's one of those ones, especially after a bleed, ladies. It's like I've talked to a lot of women. I've worked with a lot of women and practitioners who have been using this as well. It's just one of those incredible blood building formulas that is really going to support that time of the month, or throughout the entirety of the month, keeping you nice and regulated. And Hishu comes in as just pure Jing, kidney, yin essence to restore that foundation. Great for hair health as well as a plethora of other beautiful benefits that come from that incredible top-notch Hishu. Beyond that, if you sign up to the newsletter, you are going to get access to a beautiful series led by my wife Tani of Taoist self-care rituals. She's going really deep to share with you, beautiful women in our community, how you can utilize these ancient techniques. Tani's been studying for over a decade how to, ensure all areas of the female body are vibrant and, able to access their, the radiance that's always there, and keep that topped up and keep yourself feeling, really loved through these self-care rituals. And she's going deep. And so if you sign up to the newsletter, you're going to get access to that for free, as well as recipes, podcasts, articles to keep you all feeling loved and feeling nourished. You're going to want to get onto it, guys. You're going to want to get onto it because it just serves you as well to know how to keep your the woman in your life, or women in your life, feeling nourished and feeling vibrant and healthy. So kookaburras are stoked. It's like we're getting a rain blessing here down in Oz as we expand and open up to you guys in the USA. Sign up to the newsletter. Take advantage of these discounts. 20% off for Hishu and Women's Blend, or if you get them in a bundle, 25% off. Love you. So happy to be there with you.